This story is titled, My Wife Secretly Adopted a Child While I Was Deployed and Forged My Signature. Then my whole family helped her hide it from me until I returned. Hi everyone! Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey everyone! Never thought I'd be here airing my personal mess, but I don't know what else to do. My head's still spinning from what went down. I'm using a throwaway because my sister's on my main account, and I'm not ready for her lectures. Anyway, here's the deal. I'm 28, male, married to Aspen, 27 female, for 5 years. Up until recently, I thought we had a solid marriage. Turns out I was completely wrong. We met in college during our senior year. I was wrapping up my degree in military science, and Aspen was studying elementary education. She was outgoing, funny, and didn't flinch when I told her I was heading into the military. Most women I dated either weren't interested or straight up bailed as soon as I mentioned deployments. Aspen was different. She said she liked how driven I was, and that she respected what I wanted to do. At the time, I thought I'd lucked out. We dated for about a year before I proposed. Our wedding was small, just close family and friends. We didn't want to waste money on a big show when we had long-term plans. I started my officer training, and Aspen got a teaching job near the base. We bought a modest house, nothing fancy but good enough to start our life. We always talked about having kids, but we agreed to wait a few years. We set a plan that both of us agreed upon. I'd finish my first couple of deployments, we'd build up some savings, and then start trying. Aspen was completely on board. Last year, I got orders for a 9-month deployment overseas. Aspen took it hard, but said she'd manage. She told me she'd stay busy with work, house projects, and volunteering at a local daycare near her school. It seemed like a good setup. Aspen had always been involved in the community, especially with military spouses. She even ran a support group for new wives, helping them adjust to the challenges of deployment life. I left thinking everything at home was fine. We kept in touch as much as we could while I was gone. Aspen would call or text whenever I had service, and in the beginning, our conversations felt normal. She talked about repainting the living room, planting a garden, and volunteering at the daycare. We video called often, usually every few days unless we were running operations, but something started to feel off about 4 months into deployment. Aspen started acting weird during our calls. She'd always be in the kitchen or our bedroom, never show the rest of the house. Her tone started to shift. She kept mentioning how quiet and lonely the house was, how much she missed having me around, and how fulfilling it was to spend time with the kids at the daycare. I tried to be supportive, figured she was just struggling with the deployment, reminded her we'd start our family soon enough. She'd get this strange look sometimes, say stuff like she couldn't wait to show me all the changes she'd made. I assumed she meant house decorations or maybe a new garden. Then she started talking about one kid in particular, a little girl named Ren. Aspen said Ren's teenage mom was struggling and couldn't give her the care she deserved. She kept bringing it up, saying things like, "It's just so sad to see kids like her fall through the cracks." I didn't think much of it. Aspen's always had a big heart, and I figured she was just venting. I told her to hang in there, and reminded her that we'd start our family when I got back. Fast forward to my homecoming. After 20 hours of traveling, I was beyond exhausted. All I wanted was to drop my bags, shower, and crash in my own bed. But the second I walked through the door, I knew something was off. The house didn't look the same. There were baby gates everywhere, toys scattered across the floor, a high chair in the dining room, and outlet covers on all the sockets. It was like walking into someone else's house. Before I could even process what I was seeing, a little girl, maybe 2 years old, came running out of the living room yelling, "Mama!" She went straight to Aspen, who picked her up like it was the most normal thing in the world. I just stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. That's when Aspen turned to me with that weird smile on her face and said, "Hey, meet Ren, our daughter." Like she's introducing me to a new pet or something. I wish I could say I handled it gracefully, but I didn't. I couldn't even speak. My brain was still stuck on the fact that I'd left 9 months ago to a house with no kids and came back to a toddler. I didn't even get a, "Hey, honey, welcome home." Instead, I came back to, "Oh, by the way, I made a massive life-changing decision without you. Surprise! Here's our kid." I was so stunned I couldn't even get words out at first. Aspen must have noticed I wasn't reacting because she started rambling. She said she met Ren at the daycare, found out her mom was giving her up, and just knew she was meant to be ours. She kept talking about how she couldn't let Ren end up in the foster system, and how adopting her was the right thing to do. When I finally managed to find my voice, I was like, "Are you kidding me, Aspen? You made a decision like this without even talking to me?" She immediately got defensive, saying she tried to bring it up during our calls, but just couldn't figure out how to say it. Then she hit me with the whole, "I did what's best for our family" line. saying I'd get it once I spent time with Ren. Meanwhile, the kid's just standing there, wide-eyed and clutching some stuffed animal, looking totally lost while we're going at it. But the thing is, Aspen didn't just adopt Ren. She forged my signature on all the paperwork. She made a life-altering decision without consulting me, and she pretended I was 100% on board. But it didn't stop there. Apparently, my entire family knew. My parents, my sister, even my grandparents. They were all in on it. While I was deployed, they'd been visiting Aspen, babysitting Ren, and helping her get the house ready for our new family. They all thought this would be some grand surprise to welcome me home, which they did, in the most fucked up way. At that point, I couldn't even look at Aspen. I grabbed my still-packed deployment bag and headed for the door. Aspen followed me, crying and begging me not to leave. She kept saying I just needed time to adjust and that she'd done this for us. When I didn't respond, she got defensive and started accusing me of abandoning our family. I didn't bother arguing. I got in my car and drove to my buddy Jackson's place. When I got there, I just sat in his driveway for a while. I couldn't believe this was my life. The woman I trusted, the one who always insisted we make big decisions together, had gone behind my back and done something this huge. And my family, how could they be okay with this? How could they not think to call me even once and say, "Hey, are you cool with adopting a kid while you're gone?" I spent that first night at Jackson's house, replaying everything in my head. I knew Aspen had crossed a line, but I didn't realize just how deep this betrayal went. At the time, I thought it was just a bad decision she made in the heat of the moment. I didn't know it was just the tip of the iceberg. Jackson is suggesting I see a lawyer and figure out my options. But seriously, what options do I even have? Either I suck it up, accept this insane betrayal, and try to be a father to a kid I never agreed to adopt, or I'm the jerk who walked out on his family. Meanwhile, Aspen's got everyone patting her on the back for doing this superhumanly thing by giving a home to a child in need. No one seems to care that she completely trashed my trust, turned my family against me, and made a life-altering decision without even consulting me. And tomorrow, I've got to head back to base and explain to my CO why I'm not staying at my registered address anymore. The whole situation is a complete dumpster fire, and I have zero clue how to fix it. That's why I'm posting here. I thought I could use some outside perspectives. Update 1. Hey again, these past weeks have been absolute hell. I thought of giving you an update. So the first thing I did the next morning after staying at Jackson's house was call a military family lawyer. I needed to know what my options were, just like what Jackson suggested. So I laid it all out for the lawyer. My wife adopted a child without my knowledge or consent, forged my signature on the paperwork, and somehow roped my family into the whole thing. I told him I didn't even know what my legal rights were in this situation. This isn't just a domestic issue, he said. It's fraud, plain and simple. He explained that forging my signature on legal documents, especially for something as big as adoption, was a serious crime. It wasn't just a breach of trust, it was identity theft. He said I could press charges, but I needed to be prepared for what that might mean. There was no way to untangle this quietly. If I wanted to pursue legal action, it would get messy, fast. Before I made any decisions, I needed to confront Aspen. I wanted to hear her explanation face to face. Maybe part of me was still clinging to the hope that this could somehow be undone. I called her and told her to meet me at a coffee shop near Jackson's house. I didn't want to go back home yet, not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Aspen showed up about 15 minutes late, holding a folder and looking more annoyed than apologetic. She sat down across from me and, without any preamble, handed me the folder. Inside were copies of the adoption paperwork, complete with my forged signature. I stared at it, barely able to process what I was looking at. "You weren't here to sign it, and we didn't have time to wait," she said, like that was a perfectly reasonable excuse. "The adoption agency needed both parents' consent, and I knew you'd come around once you met Ren." "Come around?" I said, barely keeping my voice steady. "You lied to me. You lied to the agency. You forged my name. This isn't some impulsive decision. You planned this." She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "I didn't have a choice. The agency said they'd place Ren with another family if I didn't act fast. I wasn't about to let that happen. She needed us." I was confused how serious she was about that. Aspen wasn't apologetic or remorseful. She was defensive. In her mind, she'd done nothing wrong. When I brought up the legal consequences of forging my signature, she waved it off like it wasn't a big deal. "Do you really think anyone's going to press charges over this? I'm her mother now, and you're her father. We're a family. End of story." She talked as if she has the complete right to decide what to do in our lives now, without consulting me. I stood up and left without another word. There was no point arguing with someone who didn't even understand the gravity of what they'd done. On my way back to Jackson's, I called the adoption agency. I needed to know exactly how this happened and how much of it was built on lies. The caseworker who handled Wren's adoption sounded shocked when I told her who I was. She said Aspen had told them I was a civilian contractor working overseas and couldn't be present to sign the paperwork in person. Aspen had provided a notarized affidavit, also forged, stating that I fully supported the adoption. The caseworker offered to send me copies of all the documents, and when I saw them, I felt physically sick. It wasn't just my signature. Aspen had fabricated an entire backstory about how we'd been trying to adopt for years, and how this was our dream come true. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This wasn't just a lie. It was a whole alternate reality Aspen had created in her imagination, complete with fake paperwork and a fictional version of me. Every conversation we'd ever had about our future, about finances, about trust, now felt like a joke. Was I just a prop in her little fantasy? Did she even care what this would do to me? Or was I nothing more than an obstacle she had to work around? The betrayal wasn't just about the adoption, it was the fact that she'd rewritten my life without my consent. I decided to check our joint bank account, or rather, what used to be our joint bank account. It was empty. Every penny of the $55,000 we'd saved over the years was gone. Aspen had drained it to pay for the adoption fees, Wren's medical expenses, and God knows what else. She had also maxed out 2 credit cards I didn't even know existed, both opened in my name. My head was spinning. I had to know how far this went, and who else had been pulled into her scheme. That's when I decided to call my parents. My mom answered, and as soon as I brought up the adoption, she didn't miss a beat defending Aspen. She told me Aspen had come to them months ago, explaining how much she wanted to adopt and how we'd supposedly talked it over and agreed on it. Not only did they believe her, but they also loaned her $15,000 to help cover the costs. She just wanted to make your dream come true, my mom said, like that was supposed to make it okay. When I asked why they didn't think to call me and check, my mom brushed it off, saying Aspen convinced them it was meant to be a surprise, a way to lift my spirits after deployment. She didn't apologize or even seem to get why I was upset. Instead, she doubled down, saying Aspen had done something selfless by giving a home to a child who needed it. The more she talked, the more I realized my own mother wasn't on my side in this mess. By this point, I was angry, confused, and completely overwhelmed. Aspen had turned my life into a mess of lies and debt, and everyone around me had been complicit. The final straw came when I checked my credit report. Alongside the 2 maxed-out credit cards, there were inquiries from multiple adoption agencies. It wasn't just Wren. Aspen had tried to adopt at least 2 other children before her. Both attempts had fallen through because the birth mothers changed their minds. Aspen never mentioned any of this to me, and now it was clear this wasn't some one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern of behavior. I spent the rest of the week gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Bank statements, credit reports, forged documents, anything that showed the full extent of what Aspen had done. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. Aspen's lies had put me in legal and financial jeopardy, and I couldn't just let it slide. While all this was happening, Aspen kept texting and calling me. Her messages were a mix of apologies, justifications, and guilt trips. One minute, she'd beg me to come home and fix this together. The next, she'd accuse me of abandoning my family. When I didn't respond, she started sending pictures of Wren, saying things like, "She misses her daddy," and "How can you walk away from her?" I blocked her number. That didn't stop her. She started reaching out to my family, trying to turn them against me. My parents called, saying I needed to move past this and focus on what's best for Wren. My mom even said, "You're her father now, whether you like it or not." I reminded her that I didn't agree to any of this, but she just kept saying how much Wren needed me. It was like no one cared about how Aspen had lied and manipulated everyone. They only saw the outcome, a child who needed a home. My sister Dakota, however, finally started to see the bigger picture. She came to visit me at Jackson's house, and for the first time, she admitted she felt duped. Aspen had told her a completely different story, claiming we'd talked about adoption before my deployment and that I was supportive but too focused on work to handle the details. Dakota said she believed Aspen because it sounded like something I'd say. Hearing that made me realize just how much Aspen had manipulated not only me, but everyone around us. She had crafted this narrative so perfectly that no one thought to question her. Things escalated when my parents showed up at Jackson's unannounced. My dad was quiet, but my mom went straight into a lecture about how I was punishing Aspen for being proactive. She said Aspen was lonely during my deployment, and that adopting Wren was her way of coping. I told her this wasn't about loneliness. It was about lies and fraud. She brushed it off, saying, "She had good intentions. Isn't that what matters?" I lost it. I told them both that Aspen had drained our savings, maxed out credit cards, and forged my signature. I showed them the documents. My dad looked shocked, but my mom just said, "Money comes and goes, but family is forever." I was completely stunned. They weren't just complicit, they were enablers. They didn't see the damage she caused or the trust she shattered. I told them I needed space and asked them not to contact me until they could see things from my perspective. They left reluctantly, my mom muttering something about me being too rigid. The next day, I received an email from Aspen's school district. Apparently, the adoption agency had reported the fraud to them, and they were conducting their own investigation. Aspen was placed on administrative leave while they sorted through the allegations. She wasted no time spinning the situation on Facebook. She posted this long, emotional rant about how she was being punished for trying to give a child a loving home. She wrote about how hard it was to be a military wife and how she had to make impossible decisions while I was gone. Of course, people ate it up. Her friends and even some of my family members commented with messages of support, calling her a hero and shaming me for abandoning my responsibilities. At this point, I felt like I was living in an alternate reality. Aspen had managed to twist the narrative so completely that I was the villain in a story where she was the selfless heroine. The worst part was seeing pictures of Ren on her posts. She used that kid as a prop to gain sympathy, and it made me furious. Ren didn't ask for any of this. She was just a toddler caught in a web of lies, and Aspen was the one who put her there. Meanwhile, the lawyer started preparing the fraud case. He said we had enough evidence to press charges, but he warned me it would be a long and messy process. On top of that, there was the matter of undoing the adoption. Legally, I was listed as Ren's father, which meant I had obligations whether I liked it or not. The lawyer said we could fight to have the adoption invalidated due to the fraud, but it would be an uphill battle. Aspen's manipulation had turned everything into a total mess, and every move I made felt like sinking deeper into a trap I couldn't get out of. By the end of the week, I was completely drained. Aspen kept finding new ways to contact me, through mutual friends, fake numbers. She kept sending photos of Ren crying, saying she misses her daddy. How can I be missing someone I never agreed to be a father to? She's unbelievable. This is where I'm at right now. And honestly, I'm already exhausted. I'll keep you guys updated. Update 2. Let me get straight to this because things got even messier since my last update. So, the fallout from everything Aspen had done started spreading like wildfire. It wasn't just about the lies anymore. The fraud, the financial damage, and the ripple effect it had on everyone around me turned my entire life upside down. I was trying to keep my head above water, but it felt like every day brought another disaster tied back to her decision. The adoption agency's investigation ramped up quickly. They reached out again, this time asking for a formal statement from me. They wanted a detailed account of everything Aspen had done. They also confirmed that Ren's adoption could potentially be reversed based on Aspen's fraudulent actions. The caseworker told me that if the adoption was invalidated, Ren would likely go back into the system unless another guardian stepped forward. That news hit me hard. As angry as I was about everything Aspen had done, the idea of Ren being sent back to foster care felt wrong. She was an innocent kid who had already been through enough. I started asking questions about Ren's biological family, trying to figure out if there was a chance she could stay with someone she knew. That's when I learned about Katie, Ren's teenage birth mother, and her Aunt Harper. Turns out Katie was 16 when she had Ren, and had been struggling to balance school, work, and raising a baby. Harper had offered to adopt Ren and give her a stable home, but Aspen swooped in and convinced Katie to give her up instead. Aspen told the agency that she and I were a strong, stable couple who could give Ren the life she deserved. Harper had no idea about the fraud or the lies. She thought Katie's decision was made freely. I reached out to Harper through the agency, and we set up a meeting. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I had to at least try to make things right. Harper lived a few hours away, so I made the drive on a Saturday morning. When I arrived, Katie was there too. She was quiet at first, but as we talked, the full scope of Aspen's manipulation started to come out. Katie explained how Aspen had befriended her during her pregnancy, offering help with tutoring and babysitting. She said Aspen made her feel like she had someone in her corner, someone who understood how hard it was to be a young mom. Over time, Aspen started suggesting that adoption might be the best option for Ren. She painted this rosy picture of what life with us would be like: 2 loving parents, a safe home, and financial stability. Katie said she only agreed because Aspen seemed so genuine. She had no idea I wasn't involved, or that Aspen was lying about my consent. Hearing all of this made me feel sick to my stomach. Aspen messed with me, and she straight up manipulated a vulnerable teenager into giving up her child with lies. Harper said they were ready to take Ren back if the adoption got reversed, but they were worried about how long it would all take. They didn't want Ren stuck in some messed up limbo, getting shuffled between homes. I told them I'd do whatever it took to help them and make sure Ren ended up where she really belonged. Back on my end, things were getting even messier. The military community was divided. Some of my colleagues understood my position and encouraged me to press charges. They said Aspen's actions disrespected the trust and sacrifices that come with being a military family. Others, especially some of the spouses, sided with Aspen. They said I needed to be more forgiving and focus on building a future for Ren. It felt like no matter where I turned, someone had an opinion about what I should do. As all of this unfolded, Aspen didn't give up on trying to contact me. She showed up at Jackson's house twice, demanding to talk. The second time, she left a handwritten letter in the mailbox. In it, she apologized if she hurt me, but insisted that everything she did was for the good of our family. She begged me to come home and give our daughter a chance. She said we could go to therapy, work through the trust issues, and start fresh. It was ridiculous. How do you start fresh when someone has lied about everything? My lawyer is keeping me grounded, reminding me we had a strong case to invalidate the adoption, but it is going to be a long process. Aspen's not backing down. She's claiming my deployment forced her to make these decisions, and arguing that everything she did was for Ren's best interest. On top of that, she's twisting my reaction as proof that I'm somehow unfit to be a father. It's a mess, and every time it feels like we're getting somewhere, another issue pops up. Honestly, I have no idea how this will play out, but I'll update once there's more clarity. Thanks for sticking with me through this chaos. Update 3. Hey everyone, I figured it was time to give an update now that the court proceedings have finally kicked off. Let me tell you, this whole thing has been a draining experience in every possible way. By the time we got to the trial, I was already done with the marriage emotionally. Aspen had burned every bridge, and there was no coming back from it. Still, that didn't make dealing with the legal mess any easier. It's like trying to untangle a knot someone keeps tightening just to spite you. Anyway, here's how it's been going so far. The first issue was Ren. The court had to decide whether the adoption would stand or if it would be reversed based on the evidence of fraud. Harper and Katie, Ren's biological family, were pushing for custody. They presented a clear case. They were stable, capable, and had been ready to adopt Ren before Aspen interfered. My lawyer argued that the adoption should never have been approved in the first place due to the forged document. Aspen, of course, fought back, claiming that removing Ren would cause her irreparable harm. She painted herself as a devoted mother who was just trying to do the right thing. The hearings dragged on for weeks. Every session was a painful reminder of how far Aspen had gone to create this mess. She brought in character witnesses, friends, colleagues, and even my own parents, who testified about what a loving mother she was. I couldn't believe my parents were still supporting her after everything. My mom especially was completely convinced that Aspen's intentions somehow justified her actions. My dad was more subdued, but he didn't speak up against her either. The court eventually ruled to invalidate the adoption. The judge cited the forged documents, the lies to the adoption agency, and Aspen's manipulation of Katie as reasons why the adoption couldn't stand. Ren was placed with Harper, and the agency worked with her to finalize the transfer of custody. While I was relieved that Ren would finally have a stable home, it was bittersweet. She didn't deserve any of this. Aspen had uprooted her life and dragged her into a situation she didn't understand. I hoped Harper and Katie would give her the stability she needed to heal. Once the adoption was overturned, the divorce started moving forward. Well, sort of. Aspen made sure it wasn't smooth sailing. True to form, she dragged out every decision, refusing to settle on anything. She even demanded spousal support, claiming I had abandoned her and left her with no financial stability. My lawyer shut that nonsense down fast, pointing out that she'd drained our savings and left me with a mountain of debt. Still, the back and forth with her lawyer was draining. Every email felt like a slap in the face, a constant reminder of just how far things had fallen apart. Then, there was the financial fallout. Aspen's spending spree during her adoption mission had left me nearly $80,000 in debt. Some of it was cleared after I filed a fraud report, but a big chunk was still hanging over my head. Aspen tried to argue that the debt was shared marital responsibility, since we were married when it was incurred. My lawyer fought hard, and eventually, the court ruled that she was responsible for paying back a good portion of it. Did I expect her to actually pay it? Not really. But at least on paper, she was held accountable for once. Her behavior during the divorce was absolutely wild. She showed up at my base more than once, causing scenes and demanding to talk. At one point, she even brought printed photos of Ren and handed them out to my coworkers, claiming I was abandoning our daughter. Security had to escort her out twice. My CO was understanding and suggested I take some leave to deal with everything. I also decided to put in for a transfer after the divorce was finalized. Staying in the same town as Aspen felt unbearable. Meanwhile, Aspen continued her drama on social media. She posted these ridiculously long updates, about how she was being punished for trying to give a child a loving home. Let her spin her web. I was done trying to defend myself to people who only knew her version of the story. The one small silver lining in all of this was my sister Dakota finally coming around. She started off as one of Aspen's biggest supporters, but as more details came out, she realized how manipulative Aspen had been. Dakota actually apologized for siding with her and even testified during the divorce proceedings about the lies Aspen had told her. It wasn't like everything magically got better, but at least I had one family member who saw the truth and had my back. Aspen's parents, though, whole different story. They doubled down hard, blaming me for pushing Aspen into desperate decisions by being emotionally unavailable during deployment. Right, because me being overseas justifies forgery, lies, and manipulation. At some point, I just stopped trying to reason with them. They're too far into Aspen's version of reality, and honestly, I don't have the energy to deal with it. Final update. Hey everyone, it's been a long road since my last post, but I finally have some closure. This whole situation has been a wild ride, and if nothing else, I've learned more about resilience and starting over than I ever thought I'd need to. As the months dragged on, I started making plans for life after the divorce. I sold the house, too many bad memories tied to it, and decided I didn't want to stay somewhere that constantly reminded me of everything Aspen had done. I found a smaller place closer to my new base, somewhere I could finally hit reset. On top of that, I began the slow, painful process of digging myself out of the financial mess she left behind. It wasn't easy, but I tightened my budget, picked up extra shifts, and slowly started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. When the final divorce hearing came, it was this weird mix of relief and frustration. The court officially dissolved the marriage and ruled Aspen was responsible for part of the debt she racked up. But let's be real, the odds of her actually paying up are next to none. Still, walking out of that courtroom felt like shedding a 500-pound weight. I was finally free from her lies and manipulation, and honestly, that freedom was worth more than anything the court would have awarded me. Aspen's reaction to the divorce was exactly what you'd expect. She launched into another social media tirade, accusing me of abandoning her and leaving her destitute. She claimed she was being punished for trying to make a difference, and vowed to appeal the court's decisions. I didn't take the bait. Let her yell into the void. I was focused on moving forward. After getting the hell out of the divorce process, I was focused on getting my finances back on track. Between the drained savings and the mountain of debt Aspen left me with, it felt like an impossible task at first. I'm still chipping away at it, but I've made progress. I canceled every unnecessary expense, picked up extra shifts, and sold off anything I didn't need. I even sold my car and downgraded to something older but reliable. It's not glamorous, but every little bit helps. Months have already passed and Aspen, thankfully, is out of my life for good. She's back in Oregon with her parents, and the updates I hear about her are few and far between. Apparently, she's still working at her dad's hardware store and occasionally stirring up drama online, but fewer people are paying attention these days. Her social media rants have tapered off, and the few mutual friends we had have either distanced themselves from her or cut ties completely. I don't check in on her anymore. She's not my problem, and I've got enough to deal with without dragging her mess back into my life. As for Ren, Katie's aunt still sends me updates now and then, even though she doesn't have to. Ren's doing great. She barely even remembers her time with Aspen. She's back with her original mom, Katie, who's finishing up high school while living with her aunt. They've got this stable family setup now, which is exactly how it should have been if Aspen hadn't stuck her nose where it didn't belong. Honestly, seeing them doing so well is a bit of a relief. And the military community? They've had my back more than I ever expected, which has been a lifesaver. In the end, life isn't perfect, but it's better. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm on my way. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control of my own life again. And honestly, that's enough for now. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole mess. I don't know what the future holds, but I'll keep taking it one step at a time.